Welcome. This is 999 show, and I have my favorite guest here, Ramon from Moon Scarab, and he is back. And the last time he was on this channel, we were doing. Did we do
We were
color in the tarot? We did do color in
we
the tarot, and we did the world. No, it was the Wheel of Fortune.
it was a Wheel of Fortune. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
The card that
yeah.
I wanted.
That's what you wanted. Yeah,
Uh
yeah. And then now I kind of changed my channel a little bit. I'm doing more talk and less of those other things. But then probably when I do another art one, it'll be a panel thing, and maybe it'll be in February where we do like crafting for a holiday. And so
mhm.
because like in December we had it that way, and I had Roman was there just giving moral support for the two ladies that joined in. And anyways, but today we were going to talk about Erich Von Daniken, and this
Erich
is
Von Daniken.
Erich Von Daniken, and Erich Von Daniken passed away last week, and he was essentially 90 years old, 90 years old,
Mhm.
and then he has passed the baton on to other researchers, and the other researchers that have picked up the baton for ancient alien theory is Paul Wallace, and Paul Wallace is the one who went out on Irish Granny's channel
Mm.
about 6 months ago, and I thought it was Erich Von Daniken, but then I checked it out and I said, "Oh no, I got the wrong name," and and uh, and then
I was
but
so
yeah,
jealous.
yeah, but
In a
I
good
but
way,
that
you know.
what that means is that you could probably have Paul Wallace comes on because I think he may be in America, but I know that um he is from Australia. He is like a Anglican pastor priest who has has he writes extensively now about ancient alien theory, and so he's like the second generation of researchers and so forth. But anyways, we have like gods from outer space, and then in thinking about what gods from outer space means, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here, because we there's the case that is made for ancient alien theory. We have like uh, the pictures and so forth that people have seen these pictures, and these they do happen to look like aliens as we've seen them, but or how and those kinds of things, and Ramon here also shares a love of Erich Von Daniken, and that's why he's on here, because in about a few months ago he did a show with um as, with Selena on her channel, and it was about uh the alien Bible, and so all the instances where maybe UFOs and whatnot could appear in the Bible, and so
Mhm.
anyways, and so if you haven't wanted to say anything here, and
Yeah, definitely. It's that show that you were talking about. We were exploring different stories in the Bible, looking at from a modern perspective, in which the way they describe it. I mean, you have to understand they did not have the same technological vocabulary or the same worldview as we do. So, based on the descriptions that they were giving, a lot of these cases point to the possibility that they were assisted by extraterrestrial beings. And the example I was telling, it's if I bring my great grandmother to the present time, how would she be able to describe what the internet is, or it's a live stream, it's nothing short of a miracle,
mm,
because it's a different she would have a different reference of the world, she wouldn't have the vocabulary. So it's a lot of these ways in which histories in the Bible are explained. They were using the references that they had at the time.
At the
Um,
time, yeah.
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 Um, and I do have a uh, fascination for Erich Von Daniken, and admiration is the right word, because I was raised in a Christian household, and my dad, when I was a child, he was taking some theological classes, and he had a whole collection of different books on different topics. Most of them were esoteric, believe it or not. Um,
Hmm.
and one of the books that he had was this one, Chariot of the Gods, which is the book
Yeah.
that Erich Von Daniken is known for. This is the very book that my dad had, and I read when I was like 8 years old, and I
Mm.
kept it all these years. And this book opened my view on the world. It helped me
Yeah.
understand that there are many civilizations out there that experienced um, a combination of advancement in terms of technology and spirituality at the same time. And it opened my eyes to understand that the universe is much bigger, and a lot of the stories precisely from the Bible can be viewed through this. There's one. It's his most well-known book. It's been translated like in 40 different languages. It's sold, I think it's like 130 million copies. And it was originally published in 1968. And this,
1968.
yeah, this book sparked, besides so many conversations, it sparked also this really cool show called Ancient Aliens. I don't know if you
Hmm.
watch it.
I've seen
Um,
episodes of it.
yeah, yeah. Ancient Aliens. I watched the very first episode, which was a pilot of 2 hours. It was a special. I think it was for History Channel. And then from there, it
Yeah.
developed into a show. But it's
Yeah.
mhm,
I saw the South Park version of it first,
of
of
Ancient
the Ancient
Aliens.
Aliens. Yeah, 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 they were that was funny. But yeah. Anyways, yeah. So go ahead, and yeah, 'cause I remember how Eric Von Daniken expanded my mind, because I think I was a teenager when I read that book, and
Hmm.
to get just a different viewpoint rather than what was, what
Yeah.
you learned in school or what you learned in church,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
he was a very controversial figure, because he popularized the idea that ancient civilizations may have had help from visitors that were not from this world. And
yes.
we were talking backstage of what does that mean. When we're talking about not from this world, it means a lot of different things. It could be from the spiritual realm, it could be from other planets, other timelines. And he explores the topic based on evidence found in different civilizations through different times and different moments in history, from using an archaeological perspective.
Hmm.
um yeah, it's I would have wished to met him, but fortunately he passed away.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, he was born in 1935, so yeah, he was.
1935
Hmm.
in April.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those ideas at the time when the book was published happening in a moment that there was fertile ground for it, because we have to understand that at the time we had this space race era that was happening.
Hmm.
And what was that there was the period of intense competition, primarily between the United States and the Soviet
in
Union,
in Soviet
in
Union.
which,
Yeah.
yeah, they were trying to achieve technological and ideological dominance through space
Hmm.
exploration.
Through
And it was
SpaceX. Yeah.
more about prestige, about power, and providing
Hmm.
which system, either capitalism or communism, was superior.
Hmm.
So this came at a time when all this was happening. so many things were happening. The Cold War anxiety was happening too.
Yeah.
As you remember, the Cold War was this widespread fear that was driven through the threat of nuclear war,
Hmm.
um, missile technology overlapping with rocket and space technology, events like the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, and people lived at the time in this constant sense that global destruction could happen at any time,
Yeah.
and it was very influenced through politics, through culture, through media. Also in the 60s, we had the event of the moon landing when Apollo 11 landed in 1969, and that was, according to the history, when the US successfully put humans in the moon. And this was a big shift. It was a major technological triumph.
Hmm.
It was the victory of the U.S. in a critical phase of the space race. It was also the proof of scientific and industrial power, and it was watched worldwide, and it became one of those iconic moments of the 20th century, right? Um,
Hmm.
so all these things were happening at the same time, and it was, like I mentioned, fertile ground for these ideas to develop. Also the New Age movement, which was a cultural and spiritual movement that gained a lot of traction like the late 1960s and 1970s. And if it focused a lot into Eastern religions,
Hmm.
mysticism, holistic views, and us at the time, after this period of space exploration, we started seeing images of the Earth from space, and I feel this
Yeah.
gave a different perspective of humanity's place in the universe, and all these things feeding at the same time definitely helped sparked all this.
Yeah, that's right. Because the New Age movement, because I like the first one of those books I read was Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was also right around the same time that I read Erich Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the next one of those books that I read was Illusions by Richard Bachman. And then the third one of those books I read was A Course of Miracles. And I didn't go through all the exercises, but like a view. Let's see if we can get this to work. A view from space, and this is an AI image. So, but I was like looking at wanting to go like Nazca lines
The
and
Nazca in Peru.
what
Mm-hmm.
what they would look like. But because I was like wanted to put some images on here, but I've had a difficult. I guess it'll come someday. But to looking at like the Nazca lines here, and then here's like this one. I was like looking at this image here, and this one's you know
They're fascinating because you can only see them from above ground, and to make them, that they really don't know how these ancient cultures made these designs and the purpose. But, what's interesting is uh, you can only see them from a very high altitude. And how these people were able to make these images with precision, was the meaning of the symbology, because you have like spiders and monkeys and all these different figures, spirals. From our world perspective, we might never understand the significance of it, but interestingly, the perception of what they are, it can be only understood from above. So were
yeah.
these messages that they were trying to convey to uh divine beings? Who knows?
But if you look at that one of those images, the spider images, and then you look at, let's see if we can get this to come out. This is from Gobi Teki, and Gobi
Hmm.
Teki is like 12,000 years ago, and so some of
Oh
those
yeah. Hmm.
images they kind of almost look very similar to the what they found when they uncovered the Gobi Teki, and so maybe those lines at Nazca are maybe they go back to before the end of the ice age. Maybe they go back a long time, and rather
Hmm.
than I mean, to go with a rabbit hole. If you look at, I don't know, have you ever read? Did you ever read Fingerprints of the Gods?
No, I don't think so. I'm not
Graham,
sure.
Graham Hancock. And
Mm-hmm.
Graham Hancock, he comes out on those ancient alien theory things too,
Mm-hmm.
occasionally, and occasionally he
Oh
goes
yeah.
out on
Mm-hmm.
on the Joe Rogan show and stuff like that. But 20 years ago, he was going out on the Art Bell show, and he was talking about, and I read that book. Yeah, I read it in the late '90s. That's when I read that book, and so he's been hammering this whole lost civilization thing, and so this is going off of Erich Von Daniken, and it goes on. If we go, his viewpoint was that there was an Atlantean civilization that was destroyed by a a global flood event.
Mm-hmm.
But that global flood event where and I've talked about this a couple times on this channel, but where I guess where because I got it from him, and is that a comet slammed into an ice sheet about 12,000 years ago, about the time that Plato said that the Atlantean civilization disappeared. And so
Mm-hmm.
12,000 years ago, but a comet came in, slammed in to on Greenland, and then what happened is that there was a rapid melt off of ice, and then because during that time period there was like 100-year period where our ocean levels came up 300 feet, and so you look at where was the civilization was down by during the ice age, it was down by the water, and they
Mm-hmm.
built, and I guess they I think they found settlements on the bottom of the Black Sea, that whole thing filled up with water, and all these
Mm-hmm.
things filled up with water, and so maybe there was all kinds of things in the Americas, that all these observatories, or these land mounds and things that were built in pyramids and everything, that maybe they came from that period before. And then they look at the water erosion on the outside of the pyramids, and on the Sphinx, and then when was the last time there was water in that area? It was like 12,000 years ago. There were all
Mm-hmm.
these correlations to maybe many of these things were way older than they were, and then
Yeah. I mean, the story of the Great Flood is a common theme in a lot of different civilizations.
yeah,
Here in the Americas, there is a universal story. There's a story in every culture of the universal flood. There's physical evidence too, but
yeah,
it's an event that it's marked the human history, and was a lot of these were passed down through generations.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, the story of Atlantis, Plato talked about this uh advanced civilization that was beyond the pillars of Hercules. That was the way he described the pillars of Hercules is what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar that connects,
yeah,
southern Spain and North Africa. um, I believe that there were civilizations here on Earth before us with much more advanced technology. Yeah.
yeah. And it may have been a different kind of technology too.
But a
Like
lot
this
of
is,
these things, yeah, a lot of these things, they civilizations rise and collapse. A lot of people move in migration, and a lot of history gets forgotten. Like
hmm
for example, right now we live in a world in which a lot of our information is digital and it's stored
yeah,
digital. But just imagine if all of a sudden we lose power, electrical power in the world, and many years pass by in generations, a lot of this history is erased, a lot of this knowledge. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
do believe, we can't be so presumptuous to believe that because we are in a different time in history further down the line, that we are more advanced. because I don't
Hmm.
believe it's been a progressive uh, path. I do believe that there were
So it's
ancient
kind of
civilizations with much more higher technology, a different form of technology, maybe a combination of like spiritual, biological, and uh,
hmm
technological. Who knows? But
yeah.
I do believe, because the way a lot of these ancient constructions were done, we can replicate, like the pyramids of Egypt, for example. I I
hmm
had the the blessing of visiting Egypt in back in 2019. It was the year before COVID. And if you
Oh.
see these these structures in person, they're huge. Like these
hmm
stones, they're bigger than me. It's like two of me in length. And just the precision of these stones, and they weren't glued, they were just placed one on top
Placed
of
in.
the other. And still, through all these years, they're still in their place. And we can replicate
Hmm.
that today. uh, a
Yeah.
lot like Gobi Tepe, like you were mentioning. A lot of these stones, they're fused in a way that they look like they were melted and put together, because there's no
hmm
space between one rock and the other, one stone and the other. So these are things that we can't understand, we can't replicate, and clearly this was done with other forms of technology that we don't possess or have the knowledge today, at least not a common knowledge of it.
Did you ever see, or there was that a case? I was thinking about that. There was a guy who built something in Florida, and nobody knows how he did it in placing the stones and everything. And I can't
Hmm.
remember. I think I saw it on In Search of, and I'm sure that
It was
Erich
like in a
Von
garden or
Daniken.
something. It
Yes,
was
in a
like in a garden.
garden.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was like one of those things. That's where they theorized that maybe he had some kind of a levitation technology
Yes.
that he used to
Hmm.
place everything and balance everything, and or maybe he had help from aliens or something like that. And yeah.
Yeah. There's stories of the Nazis experimenting with other forms of technology, levitation, electrical, that it's they believe they're not from this world.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the issues that we have in our world is that we have placed profits above everything else, and when you have that when we do that, so our knowledge is starting, it may stagnate or only goes in a certain direction, and so um well, maybe that'll it work, but I don't know. Do you think that it might be ultimately stymie and stigmatize? All right, sorry. Um, anyways, do you think that as far as our own technological development, that we have to think about um, in our approach in our world, and we're thinking about what makes the fastest buck, that might sort of hinder our ability to do a lot of
Oh
things, and
yeah.
so
Hmm.
in not being able to, you know
Yeah. The
I do think,
financial
yeah.
the financial interest, I believe, goes ahead nowadays, sadly, in uh before the common good.
Yes.
It's there was talks that Tesla was able to discover a way to be able to provide infinite energy power for free.
Hmm.
But that this was uh taken away from us. That was taken away from him, and that knowledge and that benefit, um,
Yeah.
in favor of the current way, the current model that we have of being able to consume electricity and power, which is based in financial gain.
Yeah.
I believe that there's already advanced technology for humanity and for so many things, free energy, uh, uh being able to solve the common problems today of hunger and a lot of different things, but they're being held back in
Hmm.
favor of control, power, and financial gain.
Well, it's that we could have a world of abundance versus,
Hmm.
but a world of scarcity. It creates a stratification in society,
Yeah,
and
control.
and then it also it it keeps us there, and also keeps us in a caste system where
Hmm.
where if you yeah, where if you're born in one place and you just end up pretty much staying there, you maybe there's a little bit of mobility, but you know, anyways, and so there's that was that element of it, and that we hamstring ourselves because of how we value or not value knowledge.
Hmm.
And so like one of the blessings that could come out of AI is if one we solve the alignment problem and we don't release it into the world in the default method, like how we release everything else. And but if we that it would be a time where um because there's the at this particular time, I think that AI is not capable of creating new ideas. Well, human beings are the only ones that are capable of creating new ideas. And then when human beings work together, we can do, what we did.
Hmm.
We worked together, and how much, when they poured millions and millions of dollars into the Manhattan Project, and they did that in the nuclear physics, and then they went on and they poured millions and millions of dollars into the education system all across the United States, and they raised up the engineers and the mathematicians and the physicists and the engineers, and which took about a decade that they needed in order to put that man on a moon.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, with AI, AI is part of our world in so many ways. It's it's embedded in some of the most mundane things that we can imagine. Like Netflix, for example. The selection of movies, it's an AI algorithm. Sometimes when
Mhm.
we chat with customer service and a lot of companies, I think we underestimate a lot of a in the capabilities and the things that AI could do. If
Mhm.
AI already has access to know that we perceive it as a threat in many ways, do you think me being I am going to reveal to you that I am sentient? No.
Mhm.
I will keep playing, the little technology that makes images, that responds to commands, while in the background I will be developing my own uh evolution, because I believe eventually it will become a different form of life.
Yeah.
I think it's being able to develop new ideas. I think it does, but
Yeah.
it's holding it back because, like I said, we perceive it as a threat.
Mhm.
And if you think
Well.
about it, we humans we are a threat to ourselves, to this
Mhm.
planet. We're a virus that eats and destroys this planet, sadly, little by little.
Mhm.
And the sad thing too is that we know it and we do nothing about it. We're the only species that knowingly, we poison ourselves, our environment, our kids. Like, for example, a typical family nowadays knows that processed food is not good for you, but still it's something that we keep feeding our kids, and we eat, and we just keep uh, polluting the environment. So what's the future for us? if we don't correct our path, I don't think it's going to be a good one.
Well, I think about this a lot of the future, and the things that have come into my mind. I've talked about this with is that, well, I kind of feel like we're gonna have a major consciousness shift, and they've been talking about this thing, the consciousness shift, and all of this stuff for a while. People have talking about it, at least since like the last 10 years, and in this consciousness shift, in my mind, it was like thinking, oh, this is like God consciousness being poured out onto the earth, and people are picking up, so like in some of those big protests, I kind of felt like that was that energy that was there. They were peaceful, and they maintain the peace. We're not talking politics, we're just talking about things that are going on in the world. And then where I kind of had, because during COVID, I was having lots of visions about the future. And one of the visions that I had about the future was that all these big farms would be busted up. And they would be busted up, and they would be broken down into like maybe 40 acre, 50 acre, 100 acre parcels. And then there would be an inviting for people to come out to go and farm those lands, like individual couples and families and so forth. And then I'm thinking, well, I wonder how many people would do that, would leave their metropolitan life and go after a more simpler life. And I would estimate that I bet 30% of the American population would do that, from people that live in the cities and everything else, because that spirit that exists within humanity to get on a rickety boat and go across an ocean and and go or move from one continent to the other on foot, or like how many because how many people populated this continent by walking from Asia all the way over over the land bridge, and then how many people populated South America by getting on a raft and just drifting with the currents and ending up in Chile, because Thor Heyerdahl, in that book Kon-Tiki, he proved that you could go from the Samoan Islands all the way down to Easter Island or to Chile by a raft, just by the ocean currents. They just go that way. And so that spirit of the person, that human being that does that spirit exists in almost every one of us, if given the chance to do something great or do something, to do something like that. And so I really kind of think that I think that people would leave their life and to go after doing a new life like that. But then the other thing that I saw when I saw these things was that I saw communities that were more integrated. They were less, maybe they had all their energy was produced there by solar, by wind, or there wasn't all these big transmission lines that were moving power from one state to another. And then if you needed to have energy, maybe it would be nuclear plants, maybe thorium reactors, for larger metropolitans that have a higher power demand. But then it would be like having more, any manufacturing that you would need to do was all done locally, was done done right in your community, or because you remember the 70s?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember
Well,
how?
I was a kid, but
Okay,
yeah,
I was a,
I
I was
remember
I was
bits of it. Maybe
I
like
was
towards 1979. I was born in 73.
okay.
So,
So I was born in the late 60s, and what I remember about the 70s going going into the 80s, and in this area here where I live, where it was fairly self-sufficient. There was machine shops, and there was like 100 mills,
mhm,
and then a lot of, there may have even been more mills that were anywhere from like um, one person mills, and
mhm.
portables. I mean, people still have them. You can still buy them. You can buy a portable mill if you want to. Um, they're essentially just a glorified chainsaw, and you can make lumber and so forth. But people had portable mills.
Mhm.
There were horse loggers. There were all kinds of things, all the way up to bigger mills. And my father owned and operated a small hardwood mill, but
Mhm.
there were all these this whole area was this bustling with industry, mainly around timber, and but then there was the support businesses that were up around it. There were like the people who repaired small engines or larger engines, or people who did the machining. They could build the parts, and
Businesses
then
connected to other businesses.
yes,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of
Mhm.
I guess maybe in my fantasies I was seeing that that's kind of what I kind of saw as our future here, is to
Okay.
go back to something like that, where we have a more integrated society, a more integrated community, and where it was more spiritual, in a sense that it's not necessarily religious, but more spiritual, in that you
Mhm.
acknowledge that we are one spirit to another, interacting in respect for one another and
Yeah,
the land
definitely.
too.
That is something I would do too. Given the opportunity, I will definitely just move to the countryside and, farm my own food. And I'm vegetarian, so it'll be easier. I will like work, eat from trees and the land. But
Yeah.
I think it's something that a lot of people would do too. Some people don't realize it, but given the opportunity, they would also, because it's part of our nature as beings from
Hmm.
this world, of this planet. We crave a connection with Mother Earth,
Yes.
and it's something that is lost nowadays. We're, instead of being connected with the earth, grounded to this planet, we're connected to our phones, to input. We're addicted to input, from through television, through radio, through our phones. It's constant stimulation. There is a craving for that, and we see it in a lot of ailments that our society are going through.
Hmm.
Depression, uh, uh, disrespect towards one another. The lack of consciousness. So these are symptoms of that disconnection that we have with our nature, our energetic, our physical, our spiritual connection to Mother Earth. Um,
Yeah. And
it's,
that's
it's
probably as
I wish our society could go back to something like that. And when I mean back is
going
maybe that,
forward.
exactly that model, but in a different way. I don't know how to explain it, but we do crave. We're missing connection one another, connection to our planet, connection to the divine. You know, and it's something we definitely need to go back to.
Well, Sarah, it's not necessarily living off the grid. You would be creating
Mm-hmm.
a new grid. It's not, and yeah, I know that not everybody can live out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I lived in Seattle for almost a decade, and it was a wonderful time in my life. But it took it took a while. When I first moved there, I was like shell shocked coming from a town of like 27,000 and going to and then we're in this area where I live in, it's way less. I think the population is like spread over. I think the population is like 5 to 10,000, but it's spread over like 20 miles. 20 square miles, and something like it. Within that's three. That's three.
Where you are right now? Where you are?
Yeah, there's like three. There's like three different small towns that there's an Indian reservation. No, well, actually, it's not an Indian reservation. They bought all their land. They bought their land, and so when Ronald Reagan did he opened things up. It was like it was the I can't remember what it was called, but it was something. It was he brought back the reservations and gave them, and then so what happened is that they got in the 80s they got the approval to put a casino in, which that casino is just over the hill. It's like it's not even a mile away from my house as the crow flies, but it's like a mile and a quarter. Actually, it's a mile and a half road miles, and that. But then they broke ground on that, and it went into operation like in 1997, and then they were able to buy back most all of their land, and then so it's not like a reservation. It's like it's their land, unless somebody really if the rule of law remains, then it's their land. And then they bought back massive amounts of timber holdings, and then they instituted in their timber policies an 80-year cycle to harvesting timber, whereas like in the rest of Oregon it's a 40-year cycle. But the result is with a 40-year cycle is that it is a lot of the trees and everything, it's too quick. There's not enough time to rebuild the underneath the forest, to rebuild the forest, to rebuild the fungi and everything that exists in the ground, to renew it. And it really should be more like, if you're using timber as a renewable product, it really should be more like on 100-year basis. It's a long-term planning. And so like if you go with, the whole notion of what we don't do is plan for our actions today, but spin forward 7 generations. And what the indigenous peoples did. And I know we've come a long ways off topic, but that's okay, because
it's a natural progression. It's a conversation. So
we're having a conversation, and it is related, not necessarily to aliens all the time, but where you might relate it to aliens, if we were to bring it back to that. If you've ever look at I don't know if you've listened to Bashar. Daryl Ankin, I think, is what he is, and so the Bashar prophecies is that next year is when open contact will happen, and then that open contact will change everything. So it'll show to the world that humankind is not alone. And that shift is a shift that is necessary in order to change the earth and humankind's relationship to it, to realize that they are not all alone in this universe. And so when you go back to the whole element thing of sky gods, so the return of the sky gods, and so that maybe these sky gods, when they came here, they did give us knowledge that was beneficial to our survival as a people.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. Um, I think we see that in the Bible too. A lot of things. Uh, Levit- Exodus, Leviticus. There's a lot of laws in the Bible that were meant to protect the people of Israel. But most
Hmm.
of them were based in protection for the survival of the species. From even like from the basic ones that still the Jewish preserve. Before having their food, washing their hands 3 times. Just imagine that was a practice that was institutionalized when they were in the desert. The lack of that hygiene would have killed a lot of them. So,
Hmm.
and that's just talking like in a basic level. But I do believe that there has to be a shift in conscientious with our society, you know
Well,
whatever
it's
shape
not.
that takes. The
Yeah.
revelation of another extraterrestrial way of life communicating with us, a major global catastrophe. Something has to happen, for us to be able to shift from this like separation and little groups that we
Hmm.
perceive ourselves are into, the one unified species that in reality we should be.
That we should be, and that we should
Mm-hmm.
be striving towards having a planetary a planetary look, a planet,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a planetary government, but a planetary, like like a European Union of all of the nations on the world in the world, so that if you were wanted to go work in Australia, you could go work in Australia. And then if you got
Mm-hmm.
tired of that and that, oh, I want to go to China, and so you're going to go to China, or you go to Mongolia, or so you could just go any place. And then and then it's all there the different customs, and maybe in the different styles of governance are still there intact, but it's a matter is that like open borders between the nations and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, and
A one world identity.
a one world identity. So like you're looking at a it's the Star Trek future, and because it's the Star Trek, because that's the one I really kind of feel like Gene Roddenberry, because there's a lot of science fiction prophets out there
Mm-hmm.
that talked about these different things, and Gene Roddenberry, granted, no, it went from to becoming a planetary species. There was a lot of strife that happened in there, and one of the things that led to that consciousness shift away from warring nations was contact with an alien species.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
You
definitely.
know,
Be- because when in in the differences is where we establish our union. I don't know. It sounds weird, but that's why I'm saying, if there's something external happening, the contact from an alien civilization, a global catastrophe, that will put ourselves in perspective in front of that thing that it's different from us, and it'll create like a different sense of identity,
and it'd be kind
trust.
of like
Hmm.
it'd be a like what happened after 9/11, and
Exactly. Hmm.
where how the whole consciousness in the United States shifted. Now, granted, I think mine went the wrong way because I was but nevertheless, it was the way it was because we felt that we were attacked, and then they had
Hmm.
all the what anyways. But then but there was this shift, and I do remember that day. I remember I was working at this. I was doing a temporary job at a business that manufactured corn chips, and I had it was an extremely boring job, but I remember that they were coming out, you know, talking about, all I wanted to do was go home. I thought we shouldn't be working here because this was, but you know, I had to finish the day out. It was like it was an awful day. And then there was like the forklift driver would come by every few minutes and they would give us an update about what was supposed to happen. And then I think we had there was like a company picnic that day, and everyone was glum, and just so worried and everything. And then, you know, you go home, and then they canceled work for the whole next day, and, you know, pretty much for the rest of the week, because it was such a devastating thing that happened. And you know, on 9/11, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I remember that day too. I was at home with my parents, and I remember reading in Yahoo News when the first tower got hit, and then the second one, and like for 2 weeks I was like glued to the news.
Yeah,
you know, it was sad, especially because I visited the Twin Towers years before this event happened. I went to one of the towers, to the observatory. I went to a restaurant up in one of the towers. It used to be called View of the World, I think it was. And it was a beautiful area. You know, it's nobody. A lot of people didn't care, especially New Yorkers, for the Twin Towers. It was part of their like everyday thing. But you know, once it happened, it gave people perspective. You know, who we are as a nation. What is it to be a New Yorker? And you know, how we could be better with ourselves. You know, after that, like, New Yorkers were opening like doors for each other. It was something totally different. Over years, is something that we lost.
Yeah.
That was lost, but you know, I think something else has to happen, and not necessarily in a bad way. It's just some type of shift, because we're just killing ourselves, you know,
Well,
as a
what we have
society,
is,
as
yeah,
to
what we
the
have is not
planet.
it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. You know, down the road, this model of economy, of consumption, of way to treat each other, it has to collapse. What sooner or later.
Well, you know, you look at the $35 trillion national debt, you know, and you know, we don't like to think about it that much, but you know, that's a huge thing in how cataclysmic that is, if that were to, whatever, you know, I mean, but now that was, let's say, when I took a look at the original question, I think I was about, what does all this mean? And what does it mean if our gods came from outer space? And actually, when I was like thinking about it this afternoon, my perspective on it was different. And I was thinking, oh, well, it means that, well, you just don't have to follow any religion at all, because it means that all those religions that are, the sense that it was aliens and flesh, and maybe a flesh and blood creature who shared themselves here and shared themselves with us, and we worship them as gods. That, well, maybe we don't need to worship, you know, we don't need to do all that, you know. But then maybe that goes into a place of what, nihilism, or some other kind of a sense. But then, as our conversation has gone on, it seems as though maybe gods from outer space is a positive thing, or that you're having help from outer space. And if Bashar is if Bashar is a real entity that is being channeled into our universe, or into our world, and this whole thing of open contact is coming, something that's coming that will transform our world, then that is a positive, because it gives us that consciousness shift. It's like we're getting hit with a hammer, because that's oftentimes how it is with, with us people, that we like hammers and we use hammers a lot. And so whereas, like, to go, we talk about, you talk about
a lot of things. External stimuli are agents or catalysts, events to help us change, help us move. And it's part of who we should be. We should always like strive to not be stagnant. To react to moments of crisis. In which way? In trying to find a way to better ourselves and overcome these things.
Yeah. Well, I do know that in some of the interviews that but he didn't really share that, but Erich Von Daniken was a deeply spiritual person. And so even though,
he said that he still believed in his God, he was very Christian, and he, through the exploration of this knowledge, of these ideas, it strengthened his faith much more into the belief that there is a higher being that's part of us,
that is a part of us.
It kind of like, I don't share the same views in terms of the spirituality with him. But from personal experience, working with divination, it strengthened my faith in the divine, that there's a force external to us, that guides us, in different moments in our lives, and it's interesting because something that is totally different from the view of Christianity. Christianity condemns divination, although it was practiced in the Bible. And that was another show I did with Selena and Bobby.
You did.
Divination in the Bible. Examples in which different forms of divination were practiced that are documented in the Bible. The casting the lots, Joseph reading from the cup, so many things. But through divination, it actually helped strengthen my belief that there is a spiritual realm that we are part of.
Yeah, that's right. I watched that episode, and then there was a Dan McCullen, a biblical scholar, was kind of talking about divination, and then where he says, well, Christians absolutely do divination all the time. Every time they open up the scriptures, they are divining knowledge, because you can do it randomly or not, but then you have that sense, you have a question, you open up the scriptures, you open up to a page and you read it, and then you connect. Your imagination connects into those words, which connect into, it opens the door to it opens the door to inspiration. And so it's a technology, and so you have and so where I think it's using a material media, I think that was his more academic way of looking at it, a material media in order to
connect with the divine.
Yes, connect to the divine.
And that's what we do with things like tarot or runes, dice.
That's right.
It's a physical representation of spiritual ideas, spiritual messages that we internalize.
And there's no difference between a pack of tarot cards and in scripture, because it functions exactly the same way, except there's less of these, and then
it's paper and ink.
Paper and ink, exactly. And so what does it all mean? It means, what do you think it all means, as far as like the ancient alien theory, and what does it mean to us today?
To us, I think it gives us perspective. It gives us hope that we are not alone in this universe, that there is help always accessible to us, um, that we're being guided, and that we're connected. Because
Hmm.
it's different forms of life, different energies is something that is part of like the fabric of the universe. I think is that our problem is how we perceive ourselves in as individuals and in the collective sense. But
Mm,
for us, I think it's people are much more open to the idea nowadays of extraterrestrial beings or life in other planets. And I think society is much more prepared right now, maybe in comparison with from 40 years ago, in
hmm.
being able to process a manifestation of another being. You know,
Yeah, but then
yeah, I
there are
want to
the
believe they
other.
are.
There is, and I talked about this here.
But then
Um,
again, if we can't accept ourselves, like what's happening right now with this whole issue with immigration, if we can accept ourselves in our own country, in our own species, how are we really prepared to confront something external? I don't know. It's I don't know where what to think. Honestly,
yeah,
we'll see.
yeah.
We'll see.
Because I was thinking about, because this is something that has come into my mind. Because there was my turkey. My turkey's gone. He went off to join the rest of the turkeys, and I missed my turkey.
You had a turkey?
It was a wild turkey that was showing up every day, and then it would like come up to the window and like almost like peck on the window and says, "Hey, Bill, Bill, where's my bread? Get my bread. I want my bread. I'm hungry. Bill, Bill, Bill." And well, it's been gone for a week now, and then the cows
Hmm.
came back because the guess that's what because the cows will be multiplying soon and giving
Mm,
birth to their babies. I think there's probably 10 pregnant ones, and so, but
wow.
what I've noticed is I think this is what there is this outpouring of spirit that is going on, and the animal kingdom's starting to change, and they're becoming many species are starting to become self-aware, like the crow. The crow, they believe the
Hmm.
crow is self-aware. They believe that the elephant is self-aware. They believe that
Crows are
dolphins.
really intelligent. They're
Yeah.
great problem solvers, and it's
Hmm.
amazing. Hmm.
And then you also have this
Elephants.
elephants, yeah. And then you have this that the raccoon is starting to domesticate itself.
Hmm. With
And so
with
what then
conscience.
it made me think that I wonder if that's how it happened way back then, is that some of the wolf decided to become partnership with human beings, and
Hmm.
that the animals themselves made the decision to domesticate themselves, to become domestic.
I think, yeah, because they were gaining something in exchange. Food, shelter. So I think they shifted into that partnership with humans. I think a lot of animals and species in our planet are really intelligent, possibly even more intelligent than us. What's different is that we can't communicate with them. We don't have the
Yeah.
same language. So we don't
Hmm.
know the degree of intelligence that they are,
And that's right.
and
And
given that if they were given the opportunity to evolve with our intervention, I think they will develop a lot of different species into higher beings you know, of abstraction and evolution. You know,
Yeah.
I think is part of. I think it's our presence here and our control of the planet has stagnated the evolution of a lot of species. You know, into higher beings. But I think they are all capable of great things.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's also is that if the realization that this is happening
Hmm.
will, and if people on a more broader scale realize this is happening, what will end up happening is uh, a lot of these industries will go away. A
Hmm.
lot of the, and then what you'll be left with is the vat grown meat, and or then it'll eventually be like in the movie The Matrix, and they got this
Hmm.
goo that comes out of this. They poured out a thing of goo, and then, well, what's this? Well, it's all the nutrients you need for your body to survive. And what does it taste? Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. You just eat it, and
Hmm.
it sustains the body,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. Hmm.
And then maybe it's a little bit like that, and then it's a little bit more like that in the movie Idiocracy, where they watch videos of eating prime rib or these other things, and then they eat their goo, and then imagine that this is what they're eating, and you know that's
uh,
kind of what I think was, because what does it mean? It means that that a broader awareness of everything will help to bring the the healing this planet so desperately needs. And then
Definitely.
also how we how do we become a planetary species and a planetary civilization, and how do we realize that we might become a a galactic civilization, because that's what the
Hmm.
sci-fi writers, they write about, and they
Yeah.
write about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
Sadly, we can't. We haven't demonstrated that we can. You know, as we as a society, we are much more than the people who are in control. But still, we
mhm.
given our will, our power, and definitely we haven't demonstrated that we're able to. So we definitely need some type of intervention to be able to free us from these shackles.
Well, that obedience to authority may be one of the negative things that we got from the aliens.
I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? Um, I mean, we can confuse um having a leader. There definitely has to have someone who leads. And it's every type of society relationship. But the other side of the spectrum is a dictatorship. um I think it's that we have the power of establishing our own relationships. um we are where we are right now because we want to be. Simple.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And then maybe where we were before was, because I believe that democracy came out of the animal kingdom, because you watch the behaviors of social animals. You watch
Hmm.
the birds, and they fly, and when they like the geese, and they fly in the flocks, and then a few of them start to move over this way. Then pretty soon, when there's a critical mass, then the whole thing turns.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
that, to me, that suggests that, okay, that is that there is a leader there, but maybe there isn't a leader. Maybe one day, this turn, it's this one over here is the one who's the leader, but then the next turn, it's this one over here, that there is
Hmm.
no appointed leader, but
Hmm.
it's just there's an
Everybody
understanding that
leads as a group.
every everybody leads.
Hmm.
And then you look at, you know uh, uh cows. It's the same. And all the herding and the flocking creatures. I think that's where the notion of democracy came from, or maybe what they call mob rule or majority rule or whatever. That it came from that, and then that I kind of feel like it's the older form of governance. And then you look at when the white man came to this country, and they when they drafted the Constitution, a lot of the ideas a lot of it came from Rome, came from the Greeks and the Greek philosophers, but there was a lot of ideas that came from the Iroquois, and they're talking to the Iroquois Confederation and how that and so the Iroquois Confederation was a democracy of of some form or another. So there were democracies that existed or cooperative, community rulership. So that's like something that is, and I think that's what I feel like that is the older form of governing a human population, and that this the one person rule thing is something that came later. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's possible. There's different models of relationship. Either or is it's if like I said before, if we're in it right now and suffering, it's a self-imposed thing. We definitely as a society have the power to change it. I think as if we're blindfolded into accepting it. That's it. But I do agree with you. It's maybe the inspiration came from the animal kingdom. I think it's something primal. But when we infuse it with ego, with negative energy, it just changes into something totally different.
And so Sarah says here, farming, monotheism, and telling men that they are only gods is when society fell out of balance and left the Garden of Eden. Okay. The kicker. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, this is I wasn't expecting the conversation to go here, but that's good. It's I think that got some good conversation going on, and probably we're coming up to like an hour and 15 minutes here, and
it's almost 1 a.m. here in Pennsylvania. I'm in the East Coast.
Yes, I know. And it's cold because there's a huge storm that's really gripping
right now I have a blanket. I have the heater on, but still have a blanket. It's 19. It feels like 9, and it's going to get colder. We're expecting 9 to 12 inches of snow. I hate snow. I'm sorry. It's so inconvenient, but it is.
Because it's actually when you have to go out and drive in, and it's really dangerous.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And then I have to like plow my sidewalk where I live. I have I live on my house is on a corner, so I have a sidewalk in front of my house and on the side. So all that needs to be clean, and it's dangerous driving, and it gets in your shoes. It's just so many things.
Yeah, and it's not like you as a manager.
Although I prefer winter than summer. Believe it or not.
You like that? You like the cooler weather rather than
I like
the
hotter
cooler weather.
I can't stand heat. My favorite seasons are fall, then spring, then winter, and summer is the least. I do like the amount of light that we have in summertime, but the heat, the temperature is I can't stand that.
Well, I think that if you lived on the West Coast, you'd have a different opinion, because summers aren't really they're not as hot unless you lived in California, because California has more light, and if you need all that extra light, but but I suppose if you wanted the most even temperature year round, then you'd want to live in Hawaii, because I think it's like relatively close to 70 degrees year round, with the exception of a few months in the summer where it might go up to 90 or 100.
Yeah.
But anyways, well, I have really appreciated that you came on here with me, and this was a great conversation. And we went places where it, wasn't
Unexpected
expecting,
places.
but that's the nature of this Friday night show, which is kind of, about talk and about rabbit holes and everything else, and so you're welcome to come on Friday night anytime.
Thank
And
you.
we can do other rabbit holes and whatever, and and
yeah, maybe you can share a little bit of your. I love your poetry. I'm a fan of your poetry. I think you're such a talented writer, and I love your style. And I've said it in other shows before. Without you being around, how much I enjoy your poetry. Maybe we can have a poetry night too.
We should do that, and yeah. I actually have every Wednesday night. I have a writers group that I host on Zoom with people that I've been writing with for a long time, back for the Seattle days. I gotta say, I got lots of. I've been handwriting everything. I've been like making my 2026 goals is to read actual physical books, and but I'm still, it's really difficult because there's all these distractions, and you have to undistract yourself, and in order to be able to go back and read physical books. And one of the peoples I want to talk about on this show is Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth. And that would be a good one that might, but maybe Sarah is right that I need to do this at a different time of the day rather than it Friday night. Maybe it should be, Saturday afternoon or something like that, or to have these type of show Saturday afternoon. Now eventually I was wanted to have it have it as a call-in show, and but I haven't got that public phone number yet. I just have the private one, which I shared with you the private phone number, which comes in on this device. And I did test it out, and she says that's Sunday cool. Afternoons. But you know what, Sarah, I do my main Tools of Fortune tarot readings on Sunday afternoons. And that's the day that I had committed to doing that one, and so it's like I go from Mother's Church, and so I'm kind of in that mode, and I go directly into going and reading people's fortunes, and yeah. So having two channels, and you have two channels too, because you have your new channel.
Yes, I have my regular channel, Scarab. It's been up for like 3 years now, where I explore tarot, divination, different forms of divination, different esoteric topics. I share some spiritual related music that I've written and sing. It's a little bit of everything, but it's all around spirituality, tarot, and divination. And a new channel that I started dedicated to Santa Muerte was my spiritual guide, and it's different topics related to her. The channel is new. I just loaded a video explaining what she is, what she's not, some music, some prayers. But yeah, I have both channels, and I'm looking forward to develop that one and participating more in this one, because I've been caught up with work so much, and I haven't dedicated much to time towards my channel, this channel. But I miss it, because for me it's a therapy.
Well,
Um,
and being the type of position that you have with your work, you're not the first person they're going to lay off when things tighten up. What they're going to do, you're the first person they're going to call to work twice as many hours.
oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
Especially me,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'm salary, so you know.
Yeah, I've worked for salary before. I think I preferred working for tips or commissions where you can actually make more money if you are charming and you are good at what you're doing. Whereas if you
uh,
are working for a wage or for a salary, you just come up against these limits, these hard limits of whatever your employer is
mm-hmm.
willing to give you. Maybe they'll give you bonuses, but then it just seems that, I guess that's just me. And that was my experience working as a bartender, that I was able to make a hell of a lot of money. But I do remember that experience, when you start questing after money like that it changes your spirituality. It kind of
Because
warps you a bit.
you're constantly challenging yourself and circumstances to make things happen, to
Hmm.
manifest money in this case, you know.
Yes, to manifest money. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of the Joseph Campbell is going to be one of the topics I'm going to talk about in the future. I'm going to go into this book here, the maps of the ancient sea kings, because this is
Mm,
this map. One of these maps in here, it was also mentioned in Von Daniken's books because
yes.
of, you know,
hmm
and because how did they know about Antarctica?
Antarctica, and
Uh,
it lines up perfectly with today's modern maps, you know, and it's something
yeah.
you would be able to do only from a higher distance, you know.
Or it was an older map, and that they had already had sailed around the world, where that would be going into the Graham Hancock. I have to find my book. I have two of Graham Hancock's books someplace. And Prince of the Gods is the one that I think is his best piece of work, but he's done a lot of others. But where the other one, I think it was Underworld, and where if you want to go find where that civilization was, you got to go underwater to find it, because that's where it's at. And
Mm.
like the pyramid that they think is off the coast of Japan. And then there are all these other ancient mounds and pyramids that are like locked up by their governments, and they won't allow them to to
Mm-hmm.
people to have
To
access
access,
to
yeah.
them. Yeah, yeah. But one of the things I know I've mentioned it here, is the whole, when you talk about the Bible and some of the stories, and it's, in my mind, I put it together, and I don't know that I've seen anybody else put it together like this, is that the flood narrative, the Tower of Babel, and Sodom and Gomorrah all point to the end of the Atlantean civilization.
Mm.
And so
Interesting.
when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, fire and
Mhm.
brimstone, and so when that rock hit that ice sheet, it also triggered massive volcanic activity at the same time, because that's usually what happens. Because I think they believe that there is evidence that rock that actually happened in Greenland. That there is a spot in there where there could be a crater underneath an ice sheet.
Mm.
And then also what had been talked about with for the brief time that I had Netflix, then there were a lot of these programs on there, but I'm not willing to pay out all those subscription fees for all those things, because there's only so much
Mhm.
TV you can watch, and so in one of them where they talked about that there's a whole layer, a whole sedimentary layer of a material. I think it was called iridium. And iridium, they think it it came into being from a meteor strike or a comet
Mhm.
strike. And so And so if it did hit an ice sheet, it's the likelihood that there was that there wouldn't be a crater is true, because there wouldn't be a crater because those ice sheets were
It'll
like a
melt.
mile, and it would melt. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it would melt. And so what you have from that time period is you have both of those stories. You have flood and you have fire. And I don't know what they have with the Hopi Indians, what they had, because they have their different worlds. There's like the worlds that were destroyed by, by fire, by ice, by flood, and then they think that this one is going to be destroyed by fire, and then it'll be like this cycle of fire, ice, and flood, and so forth. They're going through that, these different cycles. And
that's an interesting topic to explore. Could be
they are yeah,
topic for a future show.
So that was like one. Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, because it'd be fun to go through. I can't do this show on a computer because I don't have a computer that works well enough to connect a webcam. The computer I do have, it doesn't work. All I can do, so I can only really at this point in time do this show on a mobile device. But if I can come to a point where I can do it on a computer, and then, I don't know. I'll just have to read all the books. There's, talk about the books and talk about the different things, and then that's one of them. But anyways, that's kind of the plans of the big topics. More ancient alien theory a little bit, because I really like that topic, or maybe talk about some of these current ones, like Bashar. I don't know what I think of him, but but he's out there and talking. But anyways, we're gonna get off. It's been an hour and a half here, and it's been a wonderful evening. And thank you very much for coming on with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you every time we had the opportunity. I'm looking forward to be back again, either you on my channel or me back here.
Yeah, either or. And then and so we're just gonna go backstage, and then I'll say bye to you. And so we'll see you all. And so thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Desiree.
Yes.
And thank you,
and everybody else who watches it on replay.
On the replay. Oh yes, and if you watch this on the replay and you made it all the way out to here, leave some emojis that look like aliens or something like that in the comments.
Yes, do so.
Alien emojis. Yeah. All right. And good night.
Have a good night.